Hi, and welcome to The Guilty Knitter. I'm Vivian, and this is a knitting podcast. But today I'm doing something a little bit different. This is just an intro to 5 different methods for purling. I became interested in, oh, by the way, if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm at Guilty Knitter, and on Ravelry, I'm The Guilty Knitter, all one word. You're welcome to join me over there. I have a Ravelry page for my podcast, and if you want to introduce yourself, feel free, or ask any questions, etc. You'll find links below. And also, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, hit subscribe there, and also hit the notification button if you want to get emails whenever there's a new podcast. Okay, so if you want to skip to one of the methods and you don't want to hear my intro, then that's fine. You can do that. I'll put the timings down below. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about why I'm so fascinated with different ways of purling. I think a lot of people probably stick to one method their whole lives, but I don't know. I'm pretty curious about new things, but also there has always been a logical reason for me to start looking at different methods. I started off as a thrower. That's how my mother taught me, and for all I knew, that was the only way to knit. But then when I was in my 20s or so, I happened to see my cousin. Shout out to my cousin Kay, if she's watching. I happened to see her knitting, and she was knitting Continental, and when this was kind of revelatory to me because I'd never seen anything like it. And it looked so easy and smooth, and I thought, I gotta try this. So I went home and taught myself how. After she gave me a tiny lesson, she got me going, but I mostly taught myself how. And I really liked the knitting part. That was easy, and that's still my favorite method, I think. But the purling, not so much. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that Continental purling is not the easiest or the most smooth. So I did learn that, but then I took 20 years off knitting after that, and when I came back to it in my 50s, I did take up Continental knitting again. But then I still found the purling was awkward. So, and then there was YouTube, and there were all kinds of ways to learn how to knit. So I got on there and I learned how to Portuguese purl, and that is quite an easy method that I find really comfortable. So I use that a lot for long rows and like stockinette, in the flat. So that one's included today. And then out of curiosity, I learned Norwegian purling, which is pretty cool too. You don't have to move the yarn from one side to the other. I learned that from Arne and Carlos, so I'll put a link to their video down below as well. And then I learned flicking recently. I've been working on it, I should say, because I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm going to show you that as well today, and that brings us up to 5, I think. I also have a little video which I can link. I'll put a card up at the corner to a video I did of backwards knitting. So it's basically purling, but you don't turn the work. You work the purl stitch from the right side. I find that really useful sometimes. So as you can see, I just like to change things up. I like it. It's fun. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this little series, and I'll see you on the next one. The next one will be a regular installment of my podcast where I talk about my works in progress and my finished objects and the usual things. So, but I also am going to have new and improved sound, hopefully, because I'm going to get a mic soon. I'm getting a new mic, so I'm hoping that's going to make a difference to the podcast. We'll see. Always trying to make it better. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next time. Happy knitting, happy purling, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome to The Guilty Knitter. This is a technique video. where I'll be demonstrating how to purl the English or throwing method. I have a little swatch here which I'm using, and also I'm using Addi Click needles at 4.5 millimeter. So when you knit the English style, you would tension your yarn in your right hand, and this works for knit and purl, of course. Pick up the yarn with your pinky underneath and then lay your two other fingers over the yarn, and then under that index finger. So that's one way to tension it. Tension is very important, but you need to experiment on what works for you. It takes a while to get comfortable maintaining the right tension. So if I had been knitting for a while and I wanted to purl a stitch, I would take the yarn to the front of the work, like so, with my right index finger, put my right needle through the loop on the left needle from back to front or right to left. Then I will move on. I would let go of that needle, hold the yarn in place with my left index finger and thumb, and put the yarn around the needle counterclockwise and then through to the back and off. All right, so one more time. The point goes through the loop and the yarn goes around the needle counterclockwise, through the loop and off. So that's knitting, or sorry, purling English or throwing style. All right, so that's it. And then in the next one, if you have to knit, you would take your yarn back to the back of the work to knit the next stitch. So happy purling. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome to the Guilty Knitter. I'm Vivian, and I'm going to show you how to knit, or sorry, I'm going to show you how to purl the Continental way, or the picking method is as it's also called. Move my yarn a little bit away. I've got Addi Clicks here, 4.5 millimeter Addi Clicks, which are nice needles, although for my money they should be a little pointier, but otherwise they're very nice needles. Okay, so for Continental purling, you would take your yarn in your left hand, and the way I tension it is I pick it up with my pinky and lay my two other middle fingers down over the yarn, and then the yarn goes over my index finger. And I try to keep a pretty short leash on my yarn here. It just makes it gives you more control, I think, and less tension in your hands. But everyone's different, and you need to experiment with tension to see what works best for you. Anyway, there are many ways you can do the yarn. I sometimes put an extra turn around my finger if I'm using a particularly slippery yarn. So anyway, here we go. I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches. So if you're knitting Continental, that's for another video, but I'm knitting 3 stitches Continental. And then for the purling, you would move the yarn to the front towards you, and the way you would take your right needle, put the tip through that loop on the left needle, and the thing that this part's easy, but now you have to get the yarn around the needle counterclockwise, and then through the loop and then off. And at that point your needle is at the back, so you need to pull everything back to the front and try again for the next stitch. So the needle goes in from back to front or right to left, whichever you prefer. You pull that yarn around and through the loop and then off. I tend to help things along by moving my index finger towards the front, towards me, in order to help that yarn get around the needle counterclockwise, because it can be a little tricky depending on your yarn and the needles and lots of factors. So, and then off again. So yeah, so normally I would be doing this. I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera, because when I move my I notice that if I move my index finger over like this, you can't see what I'm doing. So that's exactly the way to do it, is to pull that yarn and through the hole and then off to the back. All right, once again, in through the from the front, back to the front, through the loop, and pulling that yarn through the loop that's on your needle and then off, making the new stitch. Okay, there you go. And despite the fact that this is not my favorite method of purling, I find it a little bit cumbersome, a little bit awkward. You can certainly do pretty, it can be pretty quick, and it works for a lot of people. It works for me quite a lot of the time. I just find that I can't, my tension tends to be looser when I purl Continental than when I knit Continental, so that's something that I have to compensate for. But when so that's fine. I mean, there are ways and means of doing that. I find that if I knit Continental and purl Portuguese style, that my tension tends to be more even. But there you go. That's how you purl Continental. Happy purling. Hello, welcome to the Guilty Knitter. I'm Vivian, and I'm going to show you today how to purl the Portuguese way. It has other names too, but they escape me right at the moment. But Portuguese knitting is how I know it. So the way you would tension your yarn is you take it from wherever it's coming from the work. It goes up and around your neck from right to left. Okay, so it goes around your neck. Or you can use a knitting brooch or a necklace or something to hook it onto your person somehow. But I'm using it around my neck. It's kind of an easy way to do it, and it works, so that's how I usually do it. And to tension it, really, I just put it around my middle finger like so, and sometimes a little bit maybe around my pinky, so it comes out like that. Whatever works to keep it fairly taut. So you take your right needle, put it through the loop on your left needle. Then this is where the fun begins. You grab this yarn, the working yarn, with your thumb, pull it around the needle counterclockwise as usual, and off. So around the needle counterclockwise, through the hole and off, around the needle counterclockwise and off. So you can see how there's very little movement here, and it's very fluid and quite easy. And the knitting is a little trickier, but I won't go into that today because this is all about purling. But that's the one reason I use this method is when I have a lot of long rows to do for purling, because I find it just the most ergonomic and comfortable way to purl. So if I have a sweater where I'm knitting back and forth, for instance, a cardigan or something like that, then I will use this method pretty often, and it works well. I find it in combination with continental knitting, I should say, I can get a pretty even tension using this method of purling. So anyway, give it a try. It's, like I said, it's not hard. I find it very, very easy. Pull that yarn around with your thumb and off. So I guess for some people this might be tricky. If you have arthritis or something in your thumb, that wouldn't be so good. However, it works for me, and happy purling. Hello there, knitters. Welcome to the Guilty Knitter. I am Vivian, and I'm going to show you today how to purl the Norwegian style. I'll just quickly show you how you knit Norwegian as opposed to Continental. They're extremely similar from what I can tell. Whatever I learned from Arne and Carlos. So I will put a link to their video down below. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to show you how I would tension my yarn if I was doing it Continental style. I would pick up the yarn like so. It would go under my middle fingers and over my index finger. However, if you're knitting Norwegian style, the difference being you would just have it as close as possible, the yarn, to the needle, to your left needle. And you just basically hold the yarn like it'd be lying there like that, and you would just kind of hold it against the needle and the work so that it doesn't move, and that's kind of how you tension it. But because you're so close to the needle here, that pretty much makes it easy to keep the tension, I gather, or at least that's the idea. So for purling, it's very similar. You would just hold that like so, but instead of moving the yarn to the front, the advantage is that you would keep it at the back, which is appealing, but wait till you see what you have to do that. All right, so here you'd have to take your right needle under the yarn this time to get the yarn at the right place. So as if you were, instead of like doing this, you go like this, okay? You still put the needle through from the right to the left through that loop, and through the loop from the sort of back to the front or right to left. But now the problem is you have to get that tip to the back so that you can grab the yarn and put it around the needle, always counterclockwise. Then you would pull it through that hole that you've made, and that's why the tension here is very important, and through and off, okay? So one more time. The tip of your right needle goes under the yarn, through that loop on your left needle, and then you have to pull that needle back, so you almost get the two needles parallel to each other. That way you can grab that yarn and pull it through the loop and then off. So let's try that again. I'm so used to tensioning my yarn that even when I do Norwegian style, I tend to tension the yarn. And I just find that a little bit easier for me, but you can try it both ways. So I'm going to try it tensioning it. So, but the main thing is to keep the very little slack here. All right, so right tip of the needle under that yarn through that loop from back to front. Then pull it back, grab it with your tip. You might have to let go of the yarn a little bit there, and then off. Okay, one more time. Around that side, in through the loop, back, grab the yarn. It has to go around counterclockwise, don't forget, and then off. Okay, so that's how you do it. All right, thank you and happy knitting. All right, I'm going to show you the very last method of purling that I'm going to include today, and that is the flicking method. Now I'm going to be upfront about it. This is the one I'm the least comfortable with, and it's the one I learned the most recently. But anyway, I'm gonna give it a try. Okay, it goes around. You tension the yarn as you normally would. I find, or maybe a little bit more, maybe one more. Turn around your middle finger or something like that. And I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches. So it's very similar to knitting the English method or throwing, except that you're not meant to drop the right needle as you're knitting. Okay, so now I'm at the point where I'm purling. So I brought the yarn to the front, put my right needle through the loop on the left needle from back to front. The yarn goes around that needle
counterclockwise and off. So I'm going to do this a few times. The yarn goes, the needle tip goes through the loop on your left needle. The yarn goes around counterclockwise and off. So I think the idea is to kind of keep, I'm just kind of getting comfortable with this myself. So you want to try and keep the yarn kind of close to the tip so there's not a lot of movement. If you keep that yarn up there, then you're just kind of like going zip and then zip, zip. But you know, I'm not really, like I said, super proficient at it. I feel like it's quite awkward still. I'm going to put a video down, or a link to one or two more other videos where people explain this quite well. And I hope you will give it a try and maybe you'll become the expert. All right, happy knitting and happy purling, and I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching.